This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Brigham Dallas, CEO and owner of Hello Sugar. Welcome to the show, Brigham.
Mike, so good to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Great to have you. So you attended BYU and the U.S. Air Force Academy. You then worked for a media company for a decade, helping small to medium-sized businesses convert their online visitors into clients. And then naturally, you got into the Brazilian waxing and sugar business. I say that tongue in cheek. Tell us about your background leading up to launching the Hello Sugar brand.
Yeah, I mean, everyone asks me that. How did you get into this business? It seems so foreign to a guy, right? I love businesses. I started the media company when I was traveling and I was living abroad, and I was just living out of a suitcase for like 4 to 6 years, and I would just travel. And you can't really pick coconuts when you're living on an island, so media just seemed like a natural fit. Helped a lot of people start and grow businesses, and I was like, I want to do this for myself. Like, I want to build something for myself. I was 26, and a friend of mine came up to me and she's like, man, she's complaining. She's like, I had to pay $20,000 in taxes. And I'm like, whoa, how much money did you make? And she's like, I made $100,000 last year. I'm like, wow, like hair? And I thought she did like haircuts. She's like, no, I do Brazilian waxing. And I was like, well, tell me more about that. She goes, well, I do $45 services. I do 4 of those an hour. I'm like, 45 times 4, $180. She's like, you make more than a lawyer. Like, how much are your expenses? And she goes, like $3 a service. I'm like, wow, that's like really good. Like, how'd you find your clients? And she goes, Groupon. I found all my clients on Groupon. And I'm like, I can totally do better than that. Like, I've been doing this for so long. Like, I know I can do that part well. And then she says, I was like, well, how do you get your clients to come back like month over month? And she goes, oh, that's easy. Like, hair just grows back every month. So they just naturally come back to see me the next month. And I'm like, man, this is a perfect membership model. So, I couldn't really articulate it then, but I can now. And like all of these things are aligning, like a really low cost of product, a really like quick service with a high revenue associated with it, a massive market, right? We're not looking, I at the time thought it was like bikini waxing, but it really is like people in relationships. Like that's who gets waxed. Like we have locations in Flagstaff, Arizona that push mad numbers in the wintertime. It's not about going to the pool. It's about, I like that area clean. And so, I couldn't articulate it then, but this idea of like a really high cost of service, they come back every month, so there's continuity. The people that are working there are an esthetician that have a career and not a job. All of these things were like, check, 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 check. And I was like, hey, will you come down to Phoenix? She lived in Utah, and just teach an employee of mine how to wax. And I started a one-room studio and built it from there.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, people in relationships, and obviously there's a lot of people in relationships. It's not just going to the beach. It's like, hey, I want to look my best for my significant other. That's an interesting observation. So when did you open your very first location in the Phoenix area?
Yeah, so I was doing marketing for a plastic surgeon, and I had I just asked him, hey, could I put a room in the back of your office and do a Hello Sugar salon? And he said yes, and that was 2015. So my first location, 2015, I grew it prior to franchising until 2020. And at that time, I just had put everything I made back in the business and continued growing. And I had 10 locations when I started franchising.
That's awesome. We're going to get into that here in a minute. So you now have 15 locations in the Phoenix area. So take us back to the beginning. Like, you have that first unit that's in the office there, and now you have 15. So how did you initially fund the journey to kind of launch and subsequently scale the business to get where you are today?
Well, let's start off by saying I had no money. So this concept of spending $100,000+ on something, like, was like not even in the discussions for me. I spent $3,000 on my first location. Now, I didn't do it great. Like, I mean, this is a very, very much a startup, like, back of the shoestring budget kind of setup. But, it allowed me to have a year to figure things out. I built a website. I did all the reception in the beginning myself. We had zero branding to the site or any of it. And I just started offering services to see what clicked, came up with this membership model instead of doing packages like everybody else, and slowly built it. From there, I got to enough clientele. I did the math on this, that if I opened a flagship, which is like a full 4-room salon like you traditionally see in a shopping center, I could at least pay my rent. And that was my goal. So this suite incubated, and then I built a flagship, and I converted all my clients from the suite to the flagship. And I remember sitting out there at like 11 p.m. at night. I'd go to this location like multiple times in a day before deciding. And I was thinking, I was like, man, if this doesn't work, like I'm ruined. I invested my life savings, which was $30,000. I put all I maxed out my credit cards, I maxed out my line of credit, and I maxed out a loan of $30,000. I mean, it was literally everything I had. I downsized my apartment to a smaller level, and I just said, okay, let's send it. And this—
You're all in. You're all in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I love that whole concept of starting in a suite. We'll talk about that in a minute. So I heard there's something that you do in business that others might find crazy. What is that?
We don't use reception at all.
So that's unheard of in your space.
Yeah. I mean, you think customer journey, like they got to be greeted, give them water when they come in and make sure that they're really taken care of. And, I just think about this as a millennial or Gen Z. It's like you go into a place and it's just like you and somebody at the front. I just like feel awkward, right? Like I want to just be on my phone. I don't want to be like, how's your day going? Like I don't want to talk to somebody, right? So I don't like that personally. So I was like, okay, that part probably for a lot of people is okay. So we have just a check-in on an iPad. And then what we did was we just outsourced everything overseas for the actual reception part. And people thought I was absolutely crazy when I started doing that. But I was like, no, we're not going to use voice. We're going to do it all through text. So if somebody calls in, we say, hey, as soon as you hang up, we'll immediately text you. And then it's all my voice. I wrote out all the scripts for all of the reception side of that. And then from there, we spent $250,000 last year in AI. And then we built a ton of like stacks of documents. And the AI now answers 65% of all of our customer journeys and questions.
That is so cool. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question. It's like you're using those technology trends to kind of shape the retail space. So you're definitely adapting to that. So tell me, how'd you build that out? I mean, you took all the scripts that you have used over the years, 10 years running this business, and said, hey, let's use AI to kind of simplify the process and satisfy the customers, get them a quicker reply, and also eliminate labor.
Yeah, well, yeah. So on the eliminate labor side for franchisees, it's about $6,000 a month that you spend on reception. It's 40% of your employees. The average tenure is 3 months. They're typically college students that don't care about your business, and you're sending somebody who has like a high quality relationship with the client, such as the esthetician. You're passing that off to a minimum wage worker who's not going to sell very well. So there's a lot of complexities with reception that just suck. How do we get through this? I mean, for people listening, like it's not easy. Like you need a ton of volume to go AI. Like people talk about AI as like a buzzword, but like true AI, you need massive volume. So the first thing we did was we built out scripts for everything. I mean, there's only a couple ways to skin a cat. I want to book an appointment. I'm on my period. I need to reschedule. I need to do a membership. So we built these things called intents, and we built 40 of these intents. And then we went through hundreds of chats and trained the model to recognize that this intent is booking an appointment and this intent is I'm on my period. And then we go through and we write pages of documentation of what to say in that case. And then we describe the language that we want to use when we talk to a person. And then we tell ChatGPT, use this documentation, use this style of language, and go answer the question. And we do that silently in the background, just trained on thousands and thousands of instances until we get above a 98% confidence level that the chat is working it right. And once that happens, that intent, right, book appointment, reschedule, et cetera, is then released to the public. And we get a little bit closer to 100% automation.
That's so cool. And is that done by way of text and voice, or is it one or the other?
We have text rolled out to the entire company. We're experimenting with voice in Arizona. Voice is a different beast.
It's tricky, right?
Yeah. So we're 4 months in on voice, and we're about 50% handle rate on voice in Arizona. But I want to get a little higher before we roll it out to the public.
No, that's smart. It's great to like test it in your own stores and roll that out once you kind of feel real confident about it. So you talked a moment ago about, you were an independent business for 6 years before you even launched the franchise program. So why franchising?
Yeah, so I went back and taught at BYU. I was a professor of like how to start a small business at BYU. And I got to create my own course. It was awesome. And I just fell in love with helping people start businesses. I thought that was like my calling in life. And I was like, this is it. And then I heard about franchising. I was like, I can marry this calling in life with the business I love. And franchising just seemed like a natural fit. So in 2021, I launched, and I had no grandiose, like, I'm going to build this national company like it's becoming today. My vision was, I got a lot of friends that I think would love to be part of this. And I love sharing that experience with them. I'm just going to open this up to my friends. And like, I didn't even think about outside of that. Like, it wasn't really a concept for me. So I approached a couple of my friends. I'm like, hey, I'm making a lot of money on this. You want to try it out? And we just launched in a couple of territories that first year, and then iterated until the brand became something awesome. And when it did, we scaled it massively.
And those earlier kind of friends that became owners, were they in Arizona or were they all over the country?
A lot of them were in different areas. So one opened in Houston, Texas, one opened in Colorado. And I told them, hey, I'll do it with you. I opened in Nashville, Tennessee while that happened. Yeah.
Very cool. So how do I know the big concern with a lot of early stage franchisors, and you're, 100 units, so you're mid-market for sure. Yeah. But how do you maintain brand standards amongst franchisees? I know that's generally a concern when you go from a multi-unit independent business and you start entrusting your baby to, franchise owners that you've just met in some circumstances.
Yeah, it's really challenging for a lot of people. Our customer journey is reception, which we handle completely from the franchisor side, and then the experience inside the unit. And so we have a lot of like metrics to see how well, like, are they rebooking? Are they selling memberships? What is their quality score on reviews? So we have those to look at, but we also do something unique. We actually have certified trainers in corporate that review all new employees that come in. It costs $45 to a franchisee to have them certify their Brazilians, to make sure that their Brazilians are up to standards. And so that keeps our company's quality like solid across the whole company.
Yeah, I mean, most people have concerns about talent. Like, how do you get the right people? How do you keep them? So you have that in two capacities. You need to have the right people to help you grow your franchise system. You also need to help in some ways at least give methods for your franchise owners to retain top talent. I know there's a separation, in terms of what you can do and what you can't do as a franchisor, but how do you overall kind of help retain great talent, for your company and also for owners?
We have a higher commission model than most. So we pay commission instead of hourly plus commission. That commission looks like a little bit of a bump, about 15 to 20% in pay, usually for estheticians. We use a lot of the process of interviewing. So we have 3 interviews before they actually get hired for the job. We do a personality test. We do a role play on memberships. And then we do like a vibe test for like their actual personality. So we hope to get it right from the beginning. And then we have a really strong retention program in place to help keep them in the unit. I looked at this the other day, and it cost me about $5,000 of profit every time I lose an employee here in Arizona. And so I looked at that and I said, okay, what am I willing to spend to keep people here? And so we spend about $50 a month per employee to help with retention on the Arizona corporate side. And that's been really helpful in keeping people.
Yeah, that's really smart. I mean, get out in front of it and get great people from the get-go. And
yeah.
So let's flip-flop onto the customer side of things. Like, how do you make it sticky? How do you tackle challenges of customer retention?
Yeah, so facilitation of booking flow, that's a big one. If it's easier to book with Hello Sugar than somewhere else, that's where people will go. Like, just bottom line it. It's not like a haircut where it's like I go to Tony and Guy and I get this, 2-year professional that's like worked in Hollywood, and my hair's going to look a lot better than if I go somewhere else like Great Clips. At the end of the day, you leave hairless no matter where you go, right? So it's that journey and experience throughout. We have something where we say it hurts less here, and it hurts less here because we find the right product for the skin, whether that be wax, sugar, or laser. And also the way that we do the techniques. So we have a certification process for our estheticians that helps certify them on pain management. But I mean, like, really the differentiation, our brand looks cute and we do this pain management stuff. But for franchise owners that are looking at this business, I don't think that's why you're attracted to Hello Sugar. I don't think anyone comes in this and says, man, like, that brand is cuter than that brand. I mean, they're looking really at the financials. Well,
to that end, like, what makes you guys stand out in a crowded space from competitors in franchising?
Yeah, so outside of outside of just the waxing space, like I never would have thought that I would be in this space. Okay, so start off there. I'm a tech guy, and we are a tech company first that does waxing. So I looked at the model to make this work, and I said, how do we make this as easy as possible for franchisees? So in most businesses, you're doing a ton of marketing, you're trying to experiment with things. We do all the marketing for them. We have an entire agency that helps do this, and you only pay for performance. And I'm really proud of that, because for every dollar spent on marketing, we're seeing an $11 EBITDA return and a above $50 revenue return on that marketing dollar spent. So it's an incredibly efficient platform. The second thing we do is that we help with the hiring process. So we have services for that. The third thing we do is we actually place managers at the salons for you that are already fully trained. And that's unheard of in this business. So we actually have off-site overseas managers that come in. You don't have to use them. You can do it yourself if you want, but they're like a fraction of the cost, and they can do 80% of everything a manager here in the States can do at like I said, a fraction of the cost. And the fourth thing we do is reception. We do all the reception for the franchisees. And so you get this model where like all of those big challenging things are taken care of, except for those soft touch points of taking care of the staff members, like that personal reaction. And so our executive model is like 10 hours a week of actual work.
It's awesome. I love it. Yeah, I like how you're demystifying that concept of like having someone manage it from abroad, because you're showing them it can be done, it's effective. Because I think trying that for the first time and entrusting those, out of area employees or virtual assistants or virtual managers can be, if you've never done it before, it's super scary. So if you guys kind of show the path, I can see how franchise owners can see, well, this really saves me a lot of time, and it's an improvement to my bottom line. So I love that done for you marketing too. I think that's huge for franchise owners. So let's talk about the core service offerings. You mentioned sugaring, waxing. You also have laser. So tell us a little bit about the kind of product offering and why that makes you guys a little bit unique.
Yeah. So just to kind of give the market on laser, because I think this is a big play. You have like Milan Laser, 300 plus doors, Ideal Image, and Laser Away are big like laser concepts. These are med spa type concepts. I mean, you might be paying $5,000 for your Brazilian area to be lasered over the course of the lifetime. They do lifetime memberships. On the other end, you have mom and pops that are going to do like a 6-pack for $500. We're somewhere in between that, right? So our price point is $1,300 to $1,600, and 88%. I don't know if I can say like financial numbers. It's a very high amount of profit on this, because the only thing there is the labor, right, on that side. So what I'm seeing right now, I mean, this is early stages. We just launched laser this year. I'm seeing 20% plus of the revenue of our companies coming from laser in those salons. But that 20% is
super profitable revenue.
Yeah, on the profit line, it could add 50% to your bottom line or more by that 20% revenue, because it's all profit besides the labor.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit, you mentioned that you're a tech company and you're a tech guy. So you have any kind of beneficial reporting systems, dashboards for owners to use so that they can kind of participate in some type of executive ownership like you referenced before?
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, we built it all ourselves. We've created an entire dev stack on this. So the way I wanted data to show, like a lot of times data can be overwhelming. I wanted it to be, okay, this is something I need to do for my business. look at the data. Here are the choices I need to make with that data. So I'll give you a good example. Like if somebody's not selling well, we call that membership conversion rate. So like let's call it a sales rate, a percentage. It'll say sales. Step one, look at sales rate. If the rate is below this, do this. And so it's like a if this, then that kind of trigger. And we do this with all data points. So whether it's pre-books, sales, retention, cost per bookings for media, where our channel distributions are for the media side, how well are they creating loyalists, people that are coming back to see them. And if the loyalists are down, maybe it's a quality issue with the wax. There's like a problem set with the data and then a solution built into the data sets. And we custom built all of that.
That's really cool. So in terms of getting the franchise owners up to speed so that they can operate their business and take your decade of experience and turn that into days of training, what's that look like in your kind of university platform?
Yeah, actually, this is really cool. So a normal build out is going to take a year, an SBA loan for $400,000 or, a large amount to get something open. And then after you open, it's kind of like this, fire hose of, live or die by whatever happens at that point.
It's scary when you have that big nut.
Scary.
Yep.
We take a lot of that risk out. So just like I started my first location in a suite, you have the opportunity to start in a suite. It takes 2 months to get up and running. You're going to hire 3 people. You're going to keep 2. They're going to start training and they'll go through. We'll start running ads. We'll have 1 room. It's a 10 by 10 suite. It takes a week to build and it's up and running. While that's going on, you can go find a flagship and eventually convert the suite over to a flagship in a year from now when you feel that it's healthy and running. And the benefit of this is you can get the suite up and running. You can look at the metrics. You can season your staff. You can season your clientele with members. You're going to be able to pay your rent when you move into the flagship this way. And you now have the opportunity to learn at a less impactful way, right? Because you're not just trial by fire with this really expensive lease that you have, right? And in this way, it's a lot more digestible and manageable, but it also takes a lot of the risk out because if that location just for whatever reason didn't work out, just move it. It might take a week to move.
Yeah, you can't do that with a brick and mortar and a big lease. I love that. Yeah. I love how nimble that is. And also speed to market, right? Someone's all fired up. They sign their franchise agreement. They fund it with their initial fees to kind of lock down their area. They go through training and then they have to pump the brakes. It's in your model, you guys are go, go, go. Right away. It's let's get you in that. And the salon suites industry has exploded. There are so many great pieces of real estate where you can climb into a 10 by 10 space right away. It's awesome. So let's shift gears a little bit. So how has your role changed going from an independent owner, now you're a franchisor, and then, fast forward a handful of years and you guys have gone from 25 locations to 50 locations. Now you're 100 locations. Yeah. How has your role changed within the organization?
Yeah, it eats away a little bit of my soul that I can't be as involved in every location, right? In the beginning, it was my friends and I was in their businesses, operating their businesses just like mine. I was doing sales for them. I was training. I was looking at payrolls. And then eventually we got staff and they can start to help with that. I think now it's about strategy and driving the future growth. This year, a big focus of mine has been implementing laser across all the locations and then communicating to the franchisees case studies of what's working. So I can't be involved in every single unit, but what I do every week is I do a video similar to this where I go through the state of the union. I talk about the conversations I'm having with franchisees. I share them with the rest of the company, all the tech and all the growth that we're working on at that time and how it's actually impacting them. I give them what's called a loom. A loom is a video update that they can just, a lot of people just take it as a podcast. So they watch it as they're driving home from work or listen to it while driving home from work. And they hear those updates on a weekly basis. And we create what's called a parasocial relationship where they know a lot about me or a lot about Hello Sugar, but I'm not as involved on the day-to-day in their business. But I think that still gives enough of a touch point that it feels intimate. And then we have our teams that are on a weekly or monthly basis meeting with franchise owners.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I love the collaboration there where you're you're the guy, but you're in there helping them and not trying to overstep your bounds, but giving them enough coaching and guidance that they can just proactively reach out and get it. That's awesome. So how much does it cost? Someone loves the model. This thing's really cool. I love the idea of starting in kind of a salon suite and then finding my storefront. So kind of taking both of those locations into consideration, what's the range to open a Hello Sugar franchise?
Yeah, you can find all of this in our FDD item 7. But just kind of give an idea, the goal is not sweets, right? Because the profits on the flagships are much higher. Right now, for example, last year, profits are ranging between 100 to 250 on a flagship. So the goal of the suite is to incubate, gestate, mature, reduce the risk to prove to a flagship. A flagship's going to cost anywhere between 250 to, on the high end, 600,000. I'm not really seeing it that high, but just for range, it's probably going to be about 350 is where it like kind of ends up for a flagship, a 1,200 square foot box, and that's about what it costs to get started with Hello Sugar in general.
Yeah, and it's really good earnings on that investment. Can you share kind of a guidance for sales? I know that's going to vary from unit to unit, but in a brick and mortar, what do the sales look like?
Yeah, I'm really proud of this. So a lot of our competitors are sitting at the 500 to 600 range, and our median is above 700,000 on the flagships.
Yeah, that's a lot of volume for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and it happens because there's a market that waxes and there's a market that sugars. Right, these are different markets, and we don't have to get into the difference really. I mean, sugar is organic and it doesn't hurt as much, but there's people that will never wax and will only sugar and vice versa. And by doing both of those, it increases our AUV. And now that we're adding laser to the mix, we're seeing about a 20% jump in revenue of those locations as well, which just makes the economics so good.
That is really cool. Super exciting stuff. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, Brigham. Anything else you want to add to the mix before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I just, to talk about like what I'm looking for in franchisees. This is an executive model. So, we're looking for people that have a soft touch point, that can manage people well, that just have an enjoyable personality to be around, because these are, 23-year-old females that are doing esthetician work. And people that they can keep their full-time job. They don't have to stop what they're doing right now. They don't have to love or know anything about waxing. They need to be excited about a business that has really strong financials and willing to grow multiple territories. We'd love to see expansion across multiples. And we try to take the risk out of that with our executive model and with the suite concept. And so if that's interesting to any of you guys, hit up Mike. Mike's the guy. Hit him up and talk to him about coming to Hello Sugar.
I appreciate the plug, my man. No, I get it. I think a lot of people that are looking at executive model, there's a certain couple of categories that fit, and you don't think of this service-based model as fitting into that. But based on all the tech you bring to the table and just your way of doing business and proof of concept, like you've got it figured out. Yeah. So I'd be remiss before we wrap up if I didn't ask about that really cool picture that's behind you. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. For those that are just listening, it's this broken down airplane in Iceland. And the story behind that is this plane, it was a U.S. plane, it was a cargo ship, ran out of fuel and just emergency landed on a beach in the middle of nowhere of Iceland. And they thought it would just be better to leave it there than to take it. So you can walk like 3 miles down to this like area and see this plane. It was the middle of the night. It was midnight, but it's summer solstice. And my wife, she's crazy. She jumps on top of the plane in this beautiful red dress. And I got this cool picture of her with the wind blowing and her on this like cool shot of a plane. And that's my background.
That is so cool, man. That is awesome. It's just really cool that you not only took that picture, but were able to blow it up. And it's just really elegant and interesting. And I'm glad I asked you about it. So if anyone listening would like to connect with Brigham to learn more about becoming a Hello Sugar franchise owner, contact me at franchiseqb.com or on X at QBFranchiseQB. I'll get you guys connected. Brigham, thank you so much for taking the time to get in the huddle with us and discuss Hello Sugar.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.